don't get me wrong, I wish QNAP would work on their naming strategy, because let's face it, the reason this video exists is because their product naming structure isn't the most intuitive. Hello and welcome back, and today I want to talk about QNAP NAS. More precisely, I want to talk about the range, because I talk about NAS a lot on this channel, but there's no denying it. If you are investing in your first NAS, or you're not as heavily embedded in this industry as many people, then the QNAP NAS range can get a little confusing. They've got a large range of NAS storage devices that cater to home and business users to many degrees, along with lots of devices that are better suited to different industries such as photo and video editing, or large style backups and AI protection and 10GBE and more. So what I want to do today is break down the QNAP ranges. I'm not going to mention every single product because there is a lot, but what I'm going to do is give you some idea about how the ranges are broken down. Now, two things today. One, I'm going back to using a tablet today because it's going to be that heavy duty a list, but moreover, I do recommend you go straight over to QNAP's own website where they've got their product range available. But I will say there's a lot of products there. So watch this video all the way through before you go to that website. So let's start right at the bottom of the ladder. Let's go for the lowest of the low. These are the NASes for people that don't want to spend a lot of money, that are just investing in this technology very early on and still don't know if they're going to use it, or they just need it for something simple like some low backups, or they're using it for, as a backup time machine perhaps, or they're using it for very low level surveillance. If you're a home user that wants to stream DLNA to your PlayStation or your Xbox and you don't want anything more than that, not even 4K, these are the ones for you. These are NASes like the TS128A and the TS228A. These are the bottom rungs. It's a 1 and a 2A solution. There isn't a 4. And these tiny little chassis take 1 or 2 hard drives or SSD if you feel so bold. Bit of a waste on this device. And they feature Realtek CPU, so at least they are 64-bit ARM based chips. But there's no denying it. This is the bottom of the ladder. And of course that price is indicative of that. Hopefully it's on the screen right now. But if you are looking for the lowest of the low, but you still want QTS and the software that it arrives with, the 228 and 128A are the NASes for you. Now, little caveat, I know there are lots of NASes that aren't going to be in this video because they are end of life. And if you can still get hold of them, good for you. If you're able to get hold of a particular NAS, the Android NAS known as the TAS, I can recommend you check that out. The TS128 and the TS168 and 268. But those are the bottom rung. So once again, if your priority is price, then there you go, that's the one for you. Moving forward from that, we can go into the next tier. We're going to step out of the home market. Actually, do you know what? Let's stay with the home market, actually. Let's go for home devices and make our way through it, because the next tier of home-only devices starts here. These are devices where they focus on things like Plex Media Server, 4K, transcoding, and playback of media to a multitude of different servers, and things like MB or even Kodi support, things like Amazon Alexa, if you use certain bridging applications, or Amazon Fire Stick and Google TV and stuff like that, and Chromecast. These are the NASes to go for if your focus is home-based stuff. They can still do a lot of stuff like surveillance, but these are the devices you look at when you just want to enjoy media in the home. Maybe a few cameras and backing up multiple devices. These are things like the TS351, a 3-bay HDMI-enabled Intel-based CPU there, that 3355. And then there's some older ones like the 451 Plus and the 251 Plus. And these are devices that, although they don't handle 4K, those last two, they still perform pretty well in things like Plex Media Server at 1080p, and they do transcode 1080p as well. But that's if they are a little old. But on the flip side, you can get a bargain on the TS251 and the 451 Plus. On top of that, you've got slightly more, I'd say, target-focused devices like the HS251 Plus and the HF453DX. Now, these are slim, very low, silent NASes that will live in your home environment. But at the same time, they are expensive because of that silent element, because of a huge heatsink panel built into the top and no internal fans. So heat is something to consider. Both of which, though, do handle the likes of 4K and transcoding very, very well. That said, once more, though, they are pricey. So do bear that in mind if you are looking at that. And there are better options later in this video where you can spend that money if you don't care about the silent factor. And then of course you've got more affordable 2-bays like the TS251 Plus, 251B even, and the 251B is a dual-core PCIe enabled Intel-based NAS, which again is a lovely little middle road there between people that want to have all the features that a home user wants, but maybe be able to evolve it later. Now, after this, when we look at home NASes, these become home NASes that, although they can be used in the home, they can be used at the first step into the business area too. These are NASes that support all the features and functionality that QNAP's QTS software promises, but with the added bonus that these NASes are just pretty much ahead in their field and are still affordable. These are devices like the B and the BE series. Now when the B and the BE series started out, and that's the 253B, 453B, 653B, and there's a BE version that's a little bit more streamlined. These come with a great little CPU inside there, the J3455. They arrive with PCIe upgradability. Some of them arrive with SD card slots and direct attached access, and dual HDMI ports. And this is the other thing about QNAP's NAS series, HDMI. Because these devices arrive, almost all of them, in this bracket with HDMI ports. All of them have support of HD Station and lots of ways to enjoy your data directly via a visual interface. So it's quite interesting that these are the devices that make the bridging point. And again, QNAP is a brand that really takes things like HDMI audio output with stereo speakers in some NAS very, very seriously. So in this tier, you've got NASes like that B series. You've also got the 453 DX, and the DX, that lovely little SSD centralized NAS, the TBS NAS book. That's another one for you students and people in an educational sort of capacity that need data for their NAS. That's one for you guys to look at as well. There are other NASes that kind of cross over into this field, but this is this point is when home NASes slowly move into the business-enabled NAS areas. Now, that said, there are still other NASes in this range which still factor into home user territory. There's NASes like the 9-bay series, 5 hard drive, 4 SSDs, and these are ones that move into that area. But seeing as we're making those tippy toes into business, it would be remiss of me not to scale us back and talk about business NASes that are useless in the home. And that's true. There are a whole range of devices that, although great for low-cost business users, that people that just want to have access to the file server and the backup and the surveillance side of things, but don't really care about media. What I'm saying is they don't feature things like Intel-based chips that are graphically enabled. They've got embedded graphics on them. These are NASes that use far more efficient chips. A lot of the time they're ARM-based chips, or they are 64-bit ARM, which is relatively modern in terms of NAS anyway. And these are the devices whereby if you're looking for great throughput, and in some cases SFP 10GBE, so fiber-based 10GBE access, these are the ones for you. So these are devices like the P series, the 131P, the 231P, the 431P, then there's the upgraded versions, which have got a 2 on the end, and there's the TS328, another 3-bay RAID 5 enabled NAS for business. These are devices for business users out there that are looking to enter this area of their own private server, but don't really give a hoot about graphics and media and 4K and all that nonsense. But unfortunately, with the file sizes we're talking about a lot of the time, and of course things like surveillance, and if you're using 10GBE, a better CPU will always give you better throughput. We have to move to the next tier of business. Now, just before I go into that, it's worth mentioning that, remember that top tier of media? A lot of those can do this job too. But if you're looking for something that's rather than 60% home, 40% business, and you want that the other way around, these are the ones for you. These are NASes like the TS932X, the TS832X. You'll see a lot of X here, by the way, and a lot of that X is because of 10 gigabit Ethernet. These are QNAP NASes that feature 10 GBE, either in RJ45, so copper, much like we have anywhere around, or they'll feature it in fiber, SFP, which is just long distance, better, latency and stuff like that. But we won't talk too much about rack mounts, but I will mention that there is a 32X rack mount series in 4 and 8 and 12 bays. On top of that, along with the TS431X, there are just lots of ones in that area for small and medium business users, or SMB, to make that jump into network attached storage, but moreover, move into 10 GBE faster access for those backups. And if you've got a 10 GB system in place, these will be the ones for you. Now, most of these NASs either have an Annapurna ARM-based CPU, which is a bit meh, or they have some Marvell-based ARM CPUs or Realtek-based CPUs. But these three, what they have in common is they are ARM. That means they are, like, their architecture is based on using as little power as possible, generating as little heat as possible, and lasting as long as possible. That's why they're generally found in mobile devices. When you look at mobile device CPUs, you always find that they are ARM-based chips. Most modern devices utilize 64-bit ARM chips, but there's still a lot of 32-bit ARM out there. And because of the complexity of modern files, and particularly media, a lot of these chips aren't suitable for those home users in that arena. You can still use it for DLNA, but this is where those ARM-centric SMB NASs live. Now, moving up one tier and beyond all of those B-series NASs that we talked about earlier on, we can talk about the mid-range SMB. Once again, these are the NASs that, if not hit 50% between home and business, certainly give a home field advantage, 25 to 75, with 75 for business. Because these are the devices where they are geared towards business applications and things that QNAP have been developing for QTS over a number of years. Things like Q-tier and SSD caching, accelerated file transmission internally and externally, PCIe upgradability to add things like 10 GBE, 25 GBE and 40 GBE. These are the NASs that provide many cameras for both QVR Pro and Surveillance Station, and all of the NASs that I talked about today support the surveillance application from QNAP Surveillance Station, but not all of them support QVR Pro because you need a more powerful NAS, and it's got a better user interface, more camera licenses, 8 licenses in some cases, which is 4 times more than one of their big competitors. You know the one I'm on about. There's one of their NASs behind me. These are the devices whereby you get real performance. They may not be as graphically enabled, but in terms of file performance inside and out, these are the ones for you. These are NASs like the 951X, the 963X, the TS873 with PCIe upgradability with an AMD-based CPU. Then there's the older gen, the TVS 863, the 63 series effectively. So these are NASs that give you a lot of throughput. Some of them are graphically enabled, but in the majority of the cases with the NASs on screen, they are not. And if you are looking for a business NAS and not caring too much about visual stuff, then these could easily be the ones for you. And they do go up very high. They go all the way up to the TS1635AX, an ARM-based NAS that's got 12 hard drive bays, 4 SSD bays, I believe internal M2 bays, and is a powerhouse of processing power. And of course, with 10 GBE and PCIe slots upgradable, that is an enormous amount of storage that you can throughput around your whole business, and definitely something to bear in mind. Now, after this, things get powerful, because once again, all the NASs I'm going to talk about now in the kind of top-end business, all of these can be used for home. They all arrive with either Intel or high-end AMD-based CPUs, and we are starting to talk about Xeons, Pentiums, i3, i5, i7s. But although they're quite useful in the home, don't get me wrong, all of these NASs that I'm about to talk about will perform ridiculously well in something like Plex. That is not their target audience. They are designed to be great for business, and this is where they use that forceful power of a 64-bit x86-based CPU and really give it to you in the device. So these are ones like the 77 series, which features a Ryzen-based CPU, and there's the 77 and the 77X. Then you've got stuff like the 82 series. The 82 series arrives with 6th and 7th gen i3, i5s and i7 based CPUs inside. There was a Pentium option, I think they dropped that. As well as that, you've got the 73E series, a series of NASs that arrive with an AMD, I think R6 Radeon-based CPU inside, an enormous amount of throughput, a new, improved modern chassis design, and on top of that, all of these NASs support multiple LAN, PCI upgradability for 10 GBE, and in the case of those, several of them, they arrive with that direct access storage that lets you connect a USB cable directly to it and send data back and forth. But I do recommend that you check out the specs before making a purchase on that reason, because you still only get 1 GBE. Now, all of the devices I've talked about, almost all of them are available in a rack mount form as well, and I include that 7.7 series, which I do recommend. In fact, right here on the table, I've got 7.7 that I'm working on right now. But if we move up to the next tier, this is where, although we're still in business, we have moved to a different area of business. I'm, of course, talking about Thunderbolt. Thunderbolt 3 and Thunderbolt 2 enabled NAS is something that QNAP have had for around 2.5, 3 years now, and they have really stormed it with some fantastic Thunderbolt solutions that, in the evolution of this product range, now span a number of different user cases. But one consistent thread throughout all of these releases is their target demographic. They are aiming, they have put those crosshairs on business users who work with post-production, televisual broadcasting, photo and video editing. These users here are their target, whether it be large raw photos, 1080p editing, 4K editing, and more. These are the people they are aiming at with their Thunderbolt 3 solutions. But the different Thunderbolt solutions on offer will tier accordingly, and the one that you go for will give you a different level of read and write speed, as well as a different area of support for multiple users. And if you've got a Thunderbolt NAS, you can connect multiple Thunderbolt devices to the available Thunderbolt ports. So the more you spend on these, the more Thunderbolt ports the device has, and the more Macs and Windows devices you can connect. At the bottom of that chain is the TS453BT3, a 4-bay Intel Celeron based Thunderbolt NAS, which has 10 GBE, M.2 SSD cache, and Thunderbolt. The performance isn't fantastic. It's pretty good if you're going to edit 1080p, and definitely edit in raw photos and files. But the minute you're going for more dense 1080p, high bit rate, and of course 4K, it will not do that job, and that's why you have to move up to the next tier, the 82 series. Now, the 82 series has been around now for a little over a year and a bit, I think about a year, 3 months perhaps, and in that time, it has spanned a 4-bay, a 6-bay, an 8-bay, a 8-bay SSD optimized version, a desktop version in the 1582 TU. It's got different variant versions, each of which arrive with a different i3, i5, i7 based CPU, and all of them giving insane throughput. So if you're looking at a Thunderbolt solution, hopefully the results on screen right now are tiered from least powerful to most powerful to give you some idea, and hopefully the prices are on screen too, so you can see that tiering as well. Now, we can end up now, it's kind of ending at the last area of enterprise that QNAP have been focusing on in a big way, and that is to do with AI. Now, QNAP and the company that owns them, IEI, have an enormous focus on AI development, whether it's your own AIs or importing and exporting AI developments across different servers, and needing those rendering engines and those learning engines and the enormous amount of power that involves. They've got a series of NASs that are designed to have those insane IOPS, low latency speeds, and just general insane throughput, where you're going above and beyond simple concepts like caching 10 GBE and stuff like that, and you're moving into lightning fast speeds. Now, in this area, this is where the product numbers get real strange. You've got things like the 1677X. We'd already talked about the 77 earlier. This is the 10 GBE high optimized version, I believe, with a 6-core Ryzen 7 based chip. Also, things like the 1685, a Xeon D based CPU, I believe that's 6 or 8 cores. And then amongst a bunch of rack mounts at the 83X series, as well as some dual controller devices that we can talk about at the channel in a week or so, you have things like the Tank, the TS2888 X. Do check out my video on that, it's somewhere in the backlog. And that is an AI optimized device that has an enormous amount of hard drive storage, an enormous amount of SSD storage, both in SATA and NVMe U2, and you can get it in 18 core Xeon based chips and up to half a terabyte, that's 512 gigabytes of memory. We are talking serious power. The whole thing arrives in a server cabinet on wheels. It is a beast. And that's really the main thing about this. It's the ability to have the right tool for your needs. Don't get me wrong, I wish QNAP would work on their naming strategy, because let's face it, the reason this video exists is because their product naming structure isn't the most intuitive. But I hope this video has helped you choose the right NAS for you based on the tier. Do bear in mind that most of the prices on screen almost certainly didn't include your local tax in where area you live in the world, so always factor that in. And of course, none of them include the media, the hard drives or the SSD, so you will have to factor that into your purchase. But remember, things like RAID will assist you with the right kind of storage. So if you don't know about that, do check out my video on RAID. But otherwise, thank you so much for watching. Hope you've enjoyed this. I'm going to wrap things up now. I've got a few other videos to do. I've got all kinds of nonsense to do before the big old September releases. But otherwise, I hope you enjoyed this. Don't forget to click like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.